Comments and opinions expressed on Writers in Focus are those of the individual participants and are presented for the purpose of discussion only. No endorsements by Atlanta Fulton Public Library System or Fulton County government are intended, and none should be presumed.
Welcome to Writers in Focus. I'm your host, James Taylor. And today I'm delighted to have as my guest Miss Nia Anna Simone.
Yes.
May I call you Nia?
Yes.
Welcome to the Atlanta Fulton Public Library.
Well, thank you.
We're here to talk about your latest book, actually your first book, which is a story in itself. It's called Reaching Back, published by BET Press. It came out last year. By way of introduction, Borders bookshops nationally chose this book as chose your authorhood as an original voice. Black Expressions called it a notable work of fiction. And most interestingly, BET selected your book, Reaching Back, as a gift to the attendees of BET's 8th annual Walk of Fame honoring, I call him Big Stevie Wonder. Right. That's a pretty big plate for one's first novel. Right. I'd like to begin at the beginning. In the prologue, you talk about your dear friend Dana Nelson.
Yes.
What did Miss Nelson say to you?
She told me that while she had been in prayer, that the Holy Spirit had spoken to her and told her that I should write. And I had gone through so many, I was in the midst of turmoil in my life and at a crossroads. So I thought that she was asking me to chronicle those things just to kind of be able to look back on it at some point. And she said, no. She said, you're just supposed to write. You know, God just wants you to write, and He'll make everything fall into place for you if you'll just do that. So, yeah, I was kind of caught off guard because it's something I'd always wanted to do. I'm an avid reader, and I devour books. I have been often criticized because wherever I go, I have something to read with me. And so I told her, I said, okay, I'll try. And later that evening, after I'd walked past the computer about 110 times, I finally sat down after putting my children to bed and started writing. And at the first sitting, I wrote 35 pages. And those 35 never changed. The editor didn't make any changes on the first 35 pages. And from that, I just would sit there every night. And that was a way for me to relax.
I should say to the audience that you started writing this while you were, and as you are now, Vice President of Marketing for your own consulting firm.
Yes.
So you did have some experience with the word processor.
Yes, yes.
But where did this remarkable work of fiction come from? See, I told you before the interview, Nia, that your life miraculously, mysteriously parallels your characters.
Right.
I mean, talk about the first chapter. A beautiful woman with 3 children is leaving her husband.
Right, right, and that's very true. That was that was true of where I was, and that was true of where I was emotionally. I had been through that already, and so shortly after I lost my father, so it was just.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, just very high emotions, and it was, you know, a catharsis for me to sit and to be able to write that and get it out of me. So that's where it began. The 3 children, once it really, you know, began to take a life of its own, because after the prologue, it really is a life of its own. I just couldn't write a child less or a child more. You know, I just kept thinking of the 3 I had down the hall, and so that's where, you know, that's their part in the story.
Can you get your glasses on? I just want you to read just a few sentences to set the book up, because this is one of the motifs, the leitmotifs that run through the entire book about one's presentation of self in everyday society, to sound fancy about it, how one looks, not only to oneself but to others. This will take about 1 minute, God.
Okay.
This is your main character, Mignon. Her last name is
Samuels.
There's so many people in this book, I need a kinship chart. But this is Mignon reflecting to herself about what she's about to do. And just read from there to there, if that's okay. thank you very much.
Certainly. Not this time, she thought, as she turned away from the balcony and walked through the French doors. Entering her sitting room, she went straight to the antique carved mirror that hung above the fireplace and came face to face with her own reflection in the glass. Examining the weariness in her face, she recalled how she had always been described as an exotic beauty. But now, instead of beauty, she saw pain etched into every pore. As a young girl, the term exotic had been a constant source of humiliation and aggravation when it was used to describe her, because of her tan complexion and waist-length hair were uncommon traits among her peers. As a consequence, she was often ostracized because she did not have the stereotypical attributes of either of the distinct groups of the African-American girls. Mignon was not dark enough to be accepted by the darker-skinned black girls and not quite light enough to be accepted by the light-skinned black girls. As a result, she walked a tightrope that she had eventually turned it and transformed into a runway.
Yeah. That's how the book begins, ladies and gentlemen. And Mignon is leaving her husband,
Yes.
a very light-skinned man,
Yes.
who's an adulterer.
Yes.
She calls up her father. Father picks her up in a Range Rover. There's a lot of black middle class in this, which I like very much. And as they're driving across country, the father says, I want you to read this leather-bound book.
Correct.
With, I think, 4 generations.
Yes.
And all through every generation, there's this conflict. I'm talking too much, so bail me out here.
Okay.
There's the conflict between light skin and dark skin.
Yes.
As an avid reader, had you encountered this in literature? I haven't read that much about it.
I hadn't encountered it
Okay.
in literature. I had encountered it in life. I had many friends on both sides of the spectrum who had opposing views of the other, and it became a source of amazement to me that as one race and one culture that we had made such separations where we would categorize and classify